Good morning, evening, friends. I'm thinking about a lot of things, and current events have been pretty hectic over the past week, where a couple of murders I think have touched off a wave of sentiments across the U.S. I'm talking about the murder of the young Ukrainian woman on the subway and the murder of the conservative activist at a university speaking event. And watching the political divide express itself on X Twitter is a bad habit, but on the other hand, I like to be engaged with the public because I don't really know what the value of ancient wisdom is aside from the peace that it gives me, and it's a peace I'd like to share with you. The problem is, none of that comes easily. And I see a couple things besides fear and idolatry. But it is a sense that relief, freedom, something can be given. This thing that makes us worry and be angry and be afraid of what we think other people are trying to do to us, how we feel incomplete in ourselves, and it gives us anger and frustration. And we treat American politics and elections and our government like a wish fulfillment machine. That if we just get enough people to be angry enough, then we'll get what it has to give, which is power. The United States of America is very powerful. We have very powerful institutions. And there's lots of money. And I can see how people feel like if my politics were right, if I just vote for the right people and follow the right people, I'm going to get a piece of that goodness because America is so powerful. But like I said, it's wish fulfillment. It's like buying a lottery ticket. And it is searching for an external fix to an internal crisis. And that doesn't come. And so we just get more and more fervent so that we can feel, I don't know, secure in unity. But we misunderstand freedom because freedom, most appropriately, in the context of American society, is liberty, which means freedom under the law, which means there's something you have to give for something that you can take. Nevertheless, the bigger question that we don't often address is what's inside and how we are in control of what's inside. And I always use the Indian term Atma, a divine spark, this understanding that there is something divine within us. And it's a kind of Eastern philosophy. I think the Buddhists understand it. I think the Taoists understand it. And I don't know so much about the Hindus. But either way, it seems to me that you respond to a God-sized whole, no matter who you are, whether you think you're religious or not. And that God-sized whole contains all of the knowledge that we don't have access to, all of the things that humankind has maybe learned and forgot, or that you never got a chance to understand, or the very limits of human ability to comprehend what this universe is all about anyway. It's like seventh level physics, the mind of God, incomprehensible. No matter how far we go, our brains are only so complex. There's certain things that we do well. Like if I gave you a page of eights and I said find the nine, you could do that very well. But add up all those eights together and the nine, that's a job for a computer. And I think we'll find out with artificial intelligences some of the things that we're good at and some of the things we're not. And of course, being a computer scientist myself, or at least a practitioner, I have a good idea of some of the things that the human mind is good at and some of the things that are better left to a computer. Be that as it may, all of that together does not equal God. And the fact that we understand the idea of the infinite, of God, means we have to make some accommodation for that. And there's lots of ways to do so, but in Western civilization, we almost always do that with an external perspective. That is to say, God is out there. Or even if you're, a multi-theist, a polytheist, there's a spirit for everything. And I think Catholicism has kind of bridged the gap, which says there's the Holy Trinity and then a number of saints. But it's all trying to explain the unknown and represent that in a way that's understandable for human beings. And so here in America, we have secular saints, and they represent certain things that we can't figure out, but we'd like to give a label to it. We'd like to have some ontology. And there's two that I have cynically and snarkily declared. One of them is St. George Floyd, and his counterpart was St. Kyle Rittenhouse. And both of these people were involved in violent catastrophes. And the new one, of course, is St. Charlie Kirk. And what it is that makes us feel that these violent catastrophes must represent something about the path we're on in this country has something to do with the fact, I think, that there are things that we don't quite experience and don't quite understand, but we find that they give something, a finality that we can understand. I mean, the death of a person has a finality that we can understand. We know that that person is no more. Whatever they said, whatever they did, they'll never do again. It has closure. And we also do something when we feel frustrated and we feel that God-sized hole, without going into a formal religion and disciplining our spirits that way. We look for it from secular entertainments and television and the interwebs and our small circle of friends and our high school experience, or maybe stories that we heard at a bar. But whatever that sense of literature is, there's always an edge of horror, always an edge of disaster, always an edge of something that's so unprocessable that only violence can fix it or turn it around. We can't think our way through it. We can't make a magical poem. We can't Leviosa something. And we know that war works. We know that violence works. We know that it absolutely drastically changes a situation. And when things get so bad that we feel like there's no other way out, we're mammals. We're backed into the corner and we show our teeth. We're territorial. We are possessive. And we have bodies, and we will use them to fight. That's just our biology. That's just who we are. That's what human beings can be. And so there's this violent specter that haunts us. I used to talk about feral motorcycle movies. When I grew up in the 70s, you had these motorcycle gangs, and that represented both a kind of freedom and a kind of violence that filled that hole that we thought we had. And now there's zombie apocalypse movies and horror movies. And these give us some absolute something. And they involve us viscerally. They get us in the gut. They make us jump. They make us scream. Reading an article in the New York Times doesn't make you jump. But, we're getting there. So what do we do? What do we do about our politics? What do we do about the way we think about society and the way we think about America? It's a very difficult question to ask. It was difficult for me. I want to be public spirited. I want to be able to contribute something. And for me, for a long time, it was politics. That's what I thought. Well, let's talk about the political issues of the day. Let's engage the debates. But our politics have gotten away from principles. They've gone more towards attention and virality and memes and fashions. And so they are populist. And they don't serve our souls very well. Now, I grew up not Christian. I grew up without any of that, in fact. I had never heard of the name of Jesus until I was about 10 years old. 8 or 9. But even after that, there was no habit of going to church. It started when I was about 10 or 11. The point is, I learned multiple types of Christianity. My father went one way, my mother went another way, my school went a third way. And I had to reconcile those aspects of Christianity. But it came to me too late. I was already scientifically minded. And I'm not saying that there's absolute bifurcation between those two. I read a book by Karen Armstrong about the Dalai Lama. And he said, or maybe it was by the Dalai Lama, he said, the West is confused. There's no difference between science and religion. Well, he didn't say there's no difference. He said people put science where they should put religion. But they're not incompatible ways of discovering truth. One has its methods and the other has its other methods. And you can get to human truth for that, because human truth is not infinite. Again, we're limited in what we can understand. Just like we can't count all of the 8s on a page and tell you what the sum is, or the cube root. So we have to look inside, I think. And that's something I learned early as well, because I was open to Eastern philosophy and philosophy itself, and other ways of finding truth. Because I believe with Voltaire, I believe, who said it, that whether you're studying humanity, the human sciences, or the physical sciences, you all come around to the same conclusions about the nature of mankind. But then you figure out how much there is to know. And there's multiple ways to know it. And you can get some kind of completeness in your life if you study enough, if you luck out, if you find something that works for you. But idolatry and fear are what we're dealing with right now. We're making saints out of people who aren't really saints. They're secular saints. And we're not thinking deeply enough about whether or not they would fulfill our wishes. And then why do we have wishes that need to be fulfilled from external sources if there's a divine Atma within ourselves? It's not a gift, it's a practice, it's a discipline, it's a series of habits that you do to reward yourself, to acknowledge yourself, to build yourself up so that you say, I am living my life that I have crafted and it's working for me. And you can only do that one person at a time. And you can perhaps, fortunately, like I'm trying to do, share some of those methods with other people. Share the way that you see the world with other people, and maybe they can figure it out. I don't know if my journey is representative or archetypical or just weird and lucky, but I know that I have my inner peace. And I know that I don't need to get on one side or another. And I see how people are losing their minds and losing their patience and losing their grip on reality in this idolatry, in setting up the United States government or the Constitution or a lot of other good things, which are good to a certain limit, as if they were God. And that's our problem, I think. And we want our wishes fulfilled. And of course, it's tragic. People are being foolish and wishing death on other people's or celebrating the death of somebody because you know it hurts other people's feelings, to mock the sense of loss and tragedy and say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or some other pithy idiocy. I didn't know Charlie Kirk, or I should say, I didn't know that I knew Charlie Kirk, because when I see his face, I say, oh yeah, okay, I think I've seen this guy before. And I've watched enough few minutes to know that he has value as a human being and that he was doing the right thing. I mean, I think Ezra Klein in this moment speaks for me, even though I don't really agree with a lot of things that Ezra Klein says. I understand that he's trying to make his side better. But the fact that he's chosen a side means to me that he's not wise. Because wisdom is an expression of power that is calm, that doesn't need to scream. It's Spinoza's God. That's what I call it. And Spinoza, the legendary philosopher, said, we maintain lies in our religious discipline because we don't expect people to understand the fullness of God's glory, as it were. And that is something like, I believe it was Aristotle's lie, that some people are made of gold and some silver and some bronze or whatever. And it's true that people have limits, and it limits their mobility in society, it limits their power, it limits their wealth, it limits their education. And we have to figure out how to do that, but it's not an essentialist kind of thing. You are not a gold person, always to be gold, now and forever. You move. But sometimes, if you are comparing yourself again to the outside world and the outside society, you're not on the path to nirvana. And I'm not advocating nirvana so much as trying to elucidate the way that we variously find our way to fill the God-sized hole, the unknown, the frightening, the unknowable. And what we do in a situation like we've gone through this past week, thinking about 9/11, thinking about these murders, thinking about the future of our society, and it frightens us. But if you can say that you have done right, that you have been kind when others have been vicious, when you have been generous, when others have been selfish, and you fixed yourself so that you're responding to something, a flower that you've grown in your heart, instead of a gift that somebody hands you, like a dollar bill, with the expectation that you're going to pay them back somehow, then you're going to be good for the sake of being good for what you know goodness to be. And that takes courage. That takes bravery. That takes dedication to say, I'm making myself a better person. Not seeking some reward for it, but being a better person is its own reward. And it's hard to do when there are so many external forces and marketing and pressure telling you to do this. We have this fear of missing out, but we're missing out on ourselves, because if we're truly ourselves, we could be calm. And as you grow older and wiser and experience a lot more, and you make sense of all that, you just say, well, yeah, I've heard this joke before. It's funny. Go ahead. Laugh. But there's a bigger joke, or there's a bigger lesson, or there's something beyond what everybody's talking about. You've just seen the movie, I've read the book. Or you get to the point where you say, I wrote the book. And you really do know something. And you do approach that human truth. There's really not that much to it. And most religions nail it. They give you enough. Most philosophy gives you enough. Most proper educations can give you enough. And then some of it is innate. You know that if you watch the puppy and baby videos like I do, every once in a while, just to refresh your hope and your sense of wonder and your appreciation for just being alive, breathing, smelling the air, smelling your teenage kid's room. You'll miss that one day. Anyway, I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to look into your heart. It works. It works to look into your heart. And you say, okay, I'm not going to lose my shit over this. It's not going to change my life, because this wasn't a part of what I'm doing to make myself a better person. It's a challenge for me not to scroll in bed and hold my left hand up until it's sore, and there's tears in my eyes if I watch all this crap. It's not for me. It's something I can see. They put it in front of me, but that's not what's going to make me a better person. It's just looking for a reaction. It's looking for a like. You have to get to the business of working on your soul. And when your soul is right, you don't worry about the zombie apocalypse. You don't fear death. You don't fear any man. And so you don't behave out of fear, and you don't react out of fear. And it's sad that so many people are. It's sad to see that in my fellow human beings, that they haven't discovered the Atman. And they feel like, well, if we just did this, then we could fix the Palestinian situation. If we just did this, we could get the Syrians out of Europe and back to Syria. If we just did this, we could show that the Egyptians are Arabs as well as the Palestinians are Arabs, Muslim Arabs, or whatever. I just use those examples. They're nothing that are particularly on my mind. But people will suffer. Suffering is part of the human condition. Dying is part of the human condition. It's something we don't want to face. It's something we have to feel like we have to appeal to something. Idolatry is the worship. And worship means you're giving all honor and credit to this external source. There are people who worship the scientific consensus because they believe that should give power. There are people who worship the revolution because that should give them power and validate. There are people who worship war because the finality of death certifies that's something you can absolutely believe in. This is all idolatry. This is all destroying your front yard to spite your backyard, even though you're just on this one blue orb in the corner of one galaxy out of billions. But you and your peace and your ability to be virtuous, that's something under control that you need to spend more time working on. And you can't just give up on yourself. Everybody dies alone, but you can die at peace. And you could die having become trustworthy. That you could trust other people and people could trust you. And this is the essence of what I believe my wisdom has come to show me in all this time. And I probably could have had a better career if I spent less time thinking about stuff like this and thought more about the bottom line or learning how to do options trading or bought Bitcoin when I first heard about it. And that's a choice I can live with because I have the peace. And as dark as these days get, and as long as people are running around with their hair on fire, I can be calm. It'd help if I had a pot of tea, but next time. Anyway, I wish you peace. Crawl inside yourself. It's okay. Know that you can be good to yourself. And that may be all you get, but it also may be all you ever really need. Take care of yourself. Farewell.